Welcome to the Ultimate Landscape CEO. We have electric sheep. I see electric sheep in my dreams. I see them everywhere. I see soon the two founders of Electric Sheep, Nag Murty and Jarrett Herold. These guys are out to change the industry and even to change the world. They are trying to completely change landscape maintenance with a large scale outdoor company powered by artificial intelligence and robotics. These guys are nobody's fool. One of them comes out of the total VC aerospace engineer tech space, and the other comes out of the landscape space working for one of the largest companies. And together they are acquiring companies and they are building the technology to automate, to roboticize, really change how landscape maintenance is done. You're going to learn their histories. You're going to learn what they're doing. And I know there's been even one press release that's come out since I recorded this on some of the progress. So you really want to keep track of these guys, this company. You're going to learn where the future of landscape maintenance is headed. And of course, you're going to learn many other great things along the way on this podcast. Let's go. Welcome, Jarrett and Nag, to our podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here.
So explain to the people listening here what your company is and what it does. Jarrett, you want to kick off?
Yeah, sounds good. So we're Electric Sheep. We are a vertically integrated landscape and robotics company. So we build autonomy solutions for commercial landscaping businesses.
That's pretty short and sweet. Nag, anything to add to that?
No, I will add that we are building an AI foundation model to drive all outdoor autonomy. So we're, at the core of it, we're an AI company.
Yeah. So tell us more. I heard your one-liner there, but maybe elaborate with a few paragraphs. What is Electric Sheep and what does it actually do? If I'm reading about it in the new magazines, what am I going to read?
Right. So our thesis as a company is that the autonomy is so much more than just a robot. It's the infrastructure and the teams, and it's the whole playbook that goes around deploying technology. And we think that's better done from within a landscaping business. So what we've done in the past 18 months is we've acquired turf-heavy, maintenance-heavy landscape businesses, integrated them into our service company's brand, and we've started to deploy fully electric, automated robot mow crews as a part of them. So really what we're doing is we're taking what's the biggest cost center for a lot of commercial maintenance operators, and we're returning some of that time back to other higher value activities. That creates so many other opportunities around just obviously a labor solution, but it allows us to bid on work differently and allows us to rethink really all workflows and routing of crews from first principles, which is again something that we think is best done within our own company right now. So we can really lead the industry as the example. When people think what's landscaping maintenance going to look like in 10 years, we hope to be that example this year and subsequent years.
I heard you say first principle. Is that like Star Trek's primary directive? What is that?
I'll let Nag answer. I borrow some of the I guess talking points from spending time with people much smarter than me, but generally it's just the basics. You're rethinking things that have been standards in the industry. So I think I just accept them as universal truths, and here we are kind of challenging them. An example would be, why do we use an F-250 and a 14-foot open trailer across a large part of the industry? Why do we use super heavy gas-powered equipment? It's because the inputs have been the same for a century, right? It's guy plus machine equals output. So you can't really affect the cost of labor in a market, but maybe you can make the mower wider and faster. That's the only lever that's been available. Now we're saying, okay, like what if the human labor isn't directly tethered to the productivity of the machine? You can rethink things from like the beginning, of like what equipment goes in the truck, what a person's role is, how you divide and conquer a maintenance contract, that's what we're actively doing with our businesses.
So you're not taking any assumption or generally accepted truth or standard, let's say, as you're questioning everything. It sounds like.
Yeah, it's a balance, I'll say. So we have that muscle, and at the same time, like we're a team of operators as well. We have to deliver, quality output and make sure we're getting things done on time. So I guess take that with a grain of salt. Like we still need to get tall grass shorter at the end of the day, among other things. And then we don't want to take on too much too quickly, but in a very focused manner, that's exactly right. And specifically with the mowing portion of landscape maintenance, which we all know is it's a large piece, but it's not the piece.
I think it's very exciting what you're doing because on a quick glance, okay, it looks like 2 or 3 common trends I've seen that we're just putting together, private equity or auto mowers, but it's not really that. You're really coming at this with a whole different purpose. Yes, you've bought some companies, but you're not trying to do a roll up that you're going to sell off and make a financial gain from. You're doing this roll, and you're going to correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're doing this roll up to test your thesis and to roll out your technology and actually to co-develop it sort of organically with all these clients and companies you've brought together. And so,
exactly.
Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, right? Fundamentally, this is our journey. Our ideas have evolved as we've, gone through our own journey in running this company. When we first started, we thought, robotics was a product, right? But then as we started to build robots and deploy them and sell them to landscapers, we realized that robotics is not just a product, it's a process. And building robots, making sure they work, within the sort of the constraints of the landscaping industry, within the business model, or in a way that's economically viable, both for the robotics company as well as the landscaping business, right, is something that needs to be thought through from first principles. And, to add to what Jarrett said, this is something Elon Musk is a big fan of, right? We didn't invent the term. It's something Elon Musk sort of uses a lot. And he's done that for car manufacturing, right? You throw away all old assumptions, right? And you basically get down to the basics of why are things the way they are? Why do they cost what they do? And then you build from there up, right? And so that's what we've done for robotics. And there's 2 fundamental questions that we asked, just to dive a little bit deeper here. One was, why is it that robotics companies are bleeding money trying to subsidize the innovation for a landscaper at the other end, right? And then the landscaper is taking on, the same amount of hassle, also bleeding money, trying to implement these systems, right? These imperfect systems, and figure out workflows that work for them. Both of them are fundamentally unhappy as a result of this arrangement, right? And it turns out that there's an intermediate sort of step that's needed in this equation, and all the more so in the age of AI, but we'll sort of keep that out for now. What's really needed is for a robot to sort of almost be organically grown within the operations, right? For workflows and processes to almost be cultivated within the operations so they fit with each other like, a hand inside a glove. And once it's baked and at scale, only then can we talk about robotics as a product. And so for us, this first step was very essential. And we wish more people in the industry would do it. And, we weren't just the outliers trying to do this. It just makes so much sense to do it this way.
So just want to understand some numbers here. So how many companies have you bought? How many landscape employees do you have? And then how many other employees do you have that work on the technology?
Yeah, so today we've acquired 4 businesses and integrated them. Obviously, this is that's a large lift in and of itself, which we haven't taken lightly. Making sure we're not we're not losing any business, we're not losing customers. We have strong leaders in those businesses.
Yeah.
What was your second question? Sorry.
And so how many landscape employees do you have? And then how many technology employees do you have?
So to date, it's some between 100 and 150. That's our landscape side of things. And then within Electric Sheep, we're about 25 employees, which is an extremely lean team. But I think Nag said this already, but we have a fairly mature product that we're deploying within our businesses, extracting value. So we don't need to grow that team too aggressively to meet our near-term goals. Again, this is tightly coupled with the promise of AI and the data engine we've built in our business. So every single day these robots are deployed, they get plugged in. We can go into more depth there, but what they're learning, the edge cases they're experiencing are all going to train this greater AI model to essentially robustify the common sense that each of these robots goes out with every single day. So it's a day-to-day improvement that is happening just behind the system that is this business model that we're taking on.
Mad robots, huh? So Jarrett, are you in charge of the landscape side, and Nag, you're in charge of the technology side? Is that, am I correct on that?
Yeah, that's fundamentally how it shakes out. But we have, I'd say we're more founders who oversee sort of the spiritual core of what the business ought to be. And we have an excellent management team that essentially is driving both the landscaping and the technology side of things, right?
Gotcha. I forgot to ask you, why don't you tell the audience your guys' backgrounds? Jarrett, you can comment on that, but then share with us, who you guys are personally.
Yeah, my comment was just going to be said another way. We've hired way more talented and brilliant people to be the executors of what we do. And we're don't take that lightly. We're very fortunate to have the team we have in both the landscape world and the robotics and AI world. I can hit on my background. So grew up in the landscape industry. At my core, I'm an ops guy. I really, really love and thrive in the intersection of technology and operations. Especially, I would talk about landscaping like this as the greater public views it is the unsexy ops businesses. I really love working in this space and the people that we get to work with. So I started my career in the Brickman world. So I grew up on the East Coast, very familiar with all weather, not just California weather where we're based. And then more recently, I worked on the operations excellence team at Brightview before jumping to start Electric Sheep with Nag. And then that, for those that aren't familiar, operations excellence is, you're really you're leading process deployment and technology integration across a series of branches, which I worked with the West region of Brightview, which is a big one. What got me into Electric Sheep is just, this is a massive industry, like landscape maintenance and outdoor services more broadly. It's such a big industry, and we've seen arguably so little innovation. This becomes especially clear and obvious when you live in Silicon Valley and you're peers with the folks that are starting world-changing businesses. But landscaping, a lot of it's still done like pen and paper when a lot of businesses, big and small. So I find that so fascinating and exciting to be the company that is driving the catching the industry up, if you will. So that's really got what led me into electric sheep, but I want to make sure Nag shares his background as well.
Thanks, Jarrett. So I come from a background in deep tech entrepreneurship. I studied engineering at IIT in India. I was studying rocket science and aerospace engineering. I'm doing none of that right now. Then ended up going to Stanford to get a couple of graduate degrees. And I started my first company out of grad school at Stanford. And the whole point of applying to Stanford was because I want to start a company. And this was sort of the place to learn tech entrepreneurship. Ended up starting a medical devices company out of a class that I'd taken at grad school. It was a life-saving infant incubator, which was pretty much the most sort of unexpected thing I thought I'd end up starting a company around. But it was a problem that was so compelling that I felt like I had to sort of spend some time solving it, and that led to a product that ended up saving over 500,000 lives across 22 countries, and that company got acquired. Following that, I ended up working for the Obama administration in DC. So I moved across from California to go to Virginia. And I thought I'd put down roots in Virginia because I loved my job there and it was like chilling out. And I bought a house there, which was my first introduction to grass thing, and turf. And in the process of taking care of that turf, I began to sort of feel the itch to get into entrepreneurship again, because I was like, there's an interesting opportunity here to do technology development, build a company. But then I started to talk to Jarrett about this, who I know through common friends. And then we realized that this is so much more bigger than just a robot mowing company, right? And yeah, sure, those little Roomba Husqvarna mowers have been around for donkey's years. And they're really just a thing that just bounces around, cutting grass. There's no intelligence. There's nothing amazing technologically happening within them.
You said
and then
Husqvarna,
we realized that if you look at...
by the way?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you look at all these other companies, all they were doing was adding a GPS unit on top and calling that sort of automation. While that's useful, it was limited, right? Most people were out there just trying to do this open area mowing, producing nice straight lines. But that's really not what landscaping was about. You look at 90% of the turf out there, it is complex, right? I take my push mower and I push it around the yard. I'm doing it unlike any other robot. Now we have electric sheep, which does something similar. But most of the other automation efforts were all focused on adding a GPS or, doing something simple. And that wasn't really solving 90% of the turf that's out there. And so in the age of AI, as you start to see all these AI models mature, you start to realize that there is a huge opportunity for AI to start to eat the physical world. And mowing is just the perfect task that you want to solve, because it's just got the right amount of complexity to solve. And it's just that right amount of challenge to solve. And it can unlock massive amounts of value. Unlike self-driving, for instance, right? Where it's a huge market, but really it's very hard to solve that problem. Mowing is just right. It's in the Goldilocks zone when it comes to solving the problem. And that's what led us to start Electric Sheep, because we thought this is the confluence of all the right trends, all the right challenges. And we're passionate about doing this. And then I guess there's another angle which we haven't talked about, which is the electrification of the industry, which both Jarrett and me are really passionate about, sort of, accelerating as well. And this business model and our approach allows us to do that, at scale. So that's what led me to starting the company. And really, I was fortunate to find someone like Jarrett, because without him, there's no company, right? Because he's the landscaping expert here. And that's what really, just led to Electric Sheep being what it is today.
So
I'll just
Jarrett's in
add
Silicon.
one thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to add something real quick. Is that and just back to the challenging things from first principles type of mentality is just understanding Nag and I's background. That's we've built up both sides of that even more so over 4 years, and it's our culture is that it's the inner, like you have robotics PhDs working alongside foremen and branch managers who've worked decades in landscaping. One, it's so fun. I can't overstate how exciting and fun that is. But then it like those two worlds working hand in hand is what creates an extremely pragmatic approach to innovation. So we have the operations mindset, and we're delivering a service every single day, and but at the same time we're comfortable challenging how we do that. And like how we arrive at the outcome we're looking for. So that's like extremely unique. I think it's hard to build that, and it's been challenging, obviously, because those are very opposing forces that we have to keep very well balanced, and I think we've done a really good job of that to date.
Yeah, that is amazing. I'm always telling outsiders that not to have a simplistic view of landscaping, because really there's companies with employees that might have a master's in landscape design from Harvard working along, the foreman. And now you guys have taken it up to PhD and maybe even postdoc level. But I like that you're forcing that integration and pragmatic. The pragmatism, I guess, is one of your driving principles, right?
Very much so.
So you have one technology now, and forgive me if I'm oversimplifying it, is the auto mower, and it's in its first generation, is it?
Yeah, I would say the technology is not the mower. I just want to sort of call that out. The technology is this one model that understands physical reality the way maybe like a simple house cat would, right? Like we're not like maybe at that level of common sense, but we're aspiring to get there. And that allows it to do tasks such as mowing, and then you can put it on like a sweeper or a snowblower. So that model is like, you can sort of think of it as like a model that groks or like understands physical reality. How do I move around it? Or how do I sort of not bump into things as I walk around? And we've trained that to do mowing. And so our technology is this model, and our first product, which is an application of the model, is the mower. That's how you should think about it.
I think it's good. So you're in your first gen of the mower, is that right? And the mower is the first product. So do you have like a whiteboard somewhere where you've got all the future products and all the future generations sort of mapped out somewhere?
Well, we've got a product number 2 that's we're sort of in prototype phases with, which is really fun little robot that we'll be releasing videos of, in a few months. But yeah.
Do you want to give us a hint?
To your point, though, it's been on the whiteboard. We've erased it so we can stay focused on what we're working on. But
yeah, that's true.
There's so many exciting things that they might attack or target a specific customer profile. So think like cemeteries and solar, or HOAs versus municipalities. Like those are all slightly different customers optimized for different things, and like the product can be optimized for that as well. But I wanted to like echo what Nag said in terms of the model. So if your audience is familiar with ChatGPT, like I think this is a helpful comparison here, is what made ChatGPT what it is today is a large language model. So they trained this AI model to at its core anticipate what should come next in a string of text. No, it's not how you think of the experience. You just type in prompts and you get like really good synthesized knowledge at your fingertips.
Right.
That's kind of what ChatGPT is.
But
What we're doing is that
I just want to pause 1 second. It's interesting the way you describe ChatGPT because that sounds really simple, actually, even though it's a very complex or sophisticated tool. The way you describe it as a computer just has to guess or predict what the next word is going to be.
And don't let me trivialize that. It's extremely hard. That's why they're worth tens of billions of dollars or whatever it is. And then the impact of that is like, extremely profound. But if you understand how that works at its core, you can kind of apply how AI will take forms. And we're landscapers, like in our world. So yeah, understanding that simply, again, it's not easy, is like you're anticipating what words will come next. And like ChatGPT can write, entire blog posts for you, among other things. So take that like theme and apply it to the outdoors. So instead of anticipating text, we're anticipating like what's going to happen next in the surroundings around me. Like I'm headed in a straight line. I have a camera and I can see, all the turf around me, the trees, the benches, the guy walking a dog that's coming across the sidewalk. That's all like information that we get to train on day in and day out. And then that robot's getting a better common sense over time, which I think I touched on. So that's our world. And, if you become a leader in, we call this ES1, but our AI model for the outdoors, that's what I mean from first principles. Like, what would you do with that? Like what if you had an employee in your landscaping company that could work for $2 an hour and could do really, really basic things, but very predictably, very well? That's what you'd start to rethink. We're tying that or associating that with mowing because, like Nag said, it's like a perfect confluence of the right size market that makes the right impact on the overall business. And when you kind of rebalance workflows enough, you can do the mowing task. You can be very patient in how you realize the mowing task, if that makes sense. So rather than a super short site visit with 3 or 4 guys, maybe it's 2, and maybe you kind of set these robots up to do their thing. And then, you're doing all the, trimming, edging, pruning, that kind of stuff that's associated with landscape maintenance. So
on the surface, that's no different from. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Jarrett.
I'll just finish on my thought is like the idea of the data engine is, we're able to deploy this technology early on in our business, and we're able to extract value from it. Meaning, we're able to like superpower a 1 or 2 person mow crew today, and that's valuable within our business. And we have obviously. We're very incentivized for the technology to evolve as well. So day in, day out, when these mow crews come back to their shop, they plug their van in essentially, which uploads all of the learnings from that day, and it charges all of our equipment, electric handhelds and mowers. That's really the core of all of this. That's the data engine. We're taking what you experience as boots on the ground in a landscaping company, and we're basically training this model to have a really good understanding of the outdoors, the sites that we service.
Yeah. Got to have like 3. I got a flood of questions here. Let me see if I can remember them all.
Yeah.
So if ChatGPT only has to do one thing really well, predict the next word and then the next word, and in comparison, what you're doing is a lot harder. I mean, how you're trying to. It seems like the model that you're trying to create has a much more complicated task than the ChatGPT. Is that right?
Not necessarily. It comes down to, so think of it as a loose analogy, right? It's not like a 1:1 analogy. The way to think about this is what ChatGPT is really good at is understanding language and understanding grammar, the rules that make up the language, right? And then because it's being trained on like an insanely diverse amount of text, right? Ranging from accounting reports to Wikipedia to, all the transcripts of Seinfeld, the TV show. It's got this like really interesting sort of set of knowledge base built up within it. Now, when it comes to robotics, the problem is actually somewhat simpler because what you're saying is, one way to think about, a direct analogy would be like our ES model should predict the next frame in like the video that it's seeing to say what's going to happen next. That's not exactly true. That's a very direct analogy. Instead, what it's doing is it's saying, can I build up an internal understanding of the world such that what happens when I move my actuator or when I move my sort of vehicle to a point, how does the world change, right? Or when a blade goes over a blade of grass, what happens? So that internal understanding is what gets built up. And in many ways, it's a lot simpler. And in some ways, it's harder. So it's a very nuanced answer. I know it's not like a clean answer, but there are ways in which it's simpler. What's simpler is, the dimensionality of the problem is a lot lower, which means that it's a simpler task. But what's complicated, and this is where I think the crux of robotics is that a robot has to be very reliable, right? Extremely reliable. ChatGPT can rant and rave like some, high schooler, right? Trying to write an essay and nobody's like, nobody's hurt, right? You could just have it ramble off and like give you all kinds of incorrect facts and everybody's fine, right? But a robot can't just go run off a cliff, or it can't just go make a mess of like, your flower beds, right? Or worse yet, it can't just go like, hit like a pet or whatever. And so the reliability is way harder to achieve with robotics. So it's harder when it comes to reliability, but it's easier when it comes to sort of the simplicity of the task. I'm trying my best to sort of like
that was
explain it, but I hope you communicate. Yeah.
That was very clear. So on the face of it, when I see one of your crews out and somebody out with a Husqvarna, I'm just going to make some generalizations. On the face of it, it probably looks pretty similar today, but at some point, you're betting that your company is going to look a lot better and a lot different in the near future. Am I reading that right?
I would say, does it look similar? So an electric sheep robot to a Husqvarna, like the form factor looks similar, but there's a lot of things. Like if you tip up our mower, we have a commercial grade electric mow deck, which means it's, you can cut 2, 3, 4 inches of grass and mulch it. Husqvarna is, cutting an infinitesimal amount of grass. It's meant to live on a site. Our form factor, forget about the robot. The mow deck we're using is meant to live on a commercial mowing crew. So it's mowing it once a week and moving on, to the next site. That's fundamentally different. And then while, Husqvarna's have evolved a little bit, it used to be just a random bounce. You would have this at your yard or a commercial site or something. It's maybe cutting like an acre or 1.5 acres, but it has to cut it all the time. And then there are newer models that have some of these, like a GPS overlaid on it, which gives it some sense of the world. But again, it's a highly unproductive machine as compared to starting with a commercial machine.
For the cost that you're spending on a Husqvarna, let's talk numbers, right? Like maybe we should stop saying Husqvarna because we don't have any. We respect all companies in this space. I'm not trying to pick a fight with anyone. Like I think everybody's like amazing. When you talk about like a little Roomba mower, right? Like that costs, let's say, a few $1,000s, right? And now you're sticking it on 1 acre, and that's it. So now you have to pay off that like X $1,000 investment against like the acreage that you're putting it on. But if you take our machine, and I'll just say not just our machine, but let's call out all our competitors, right, or previous competitors like Scythe, Greensy, or whoever else. The philosophy there is you have a robot that sits alongside a mow crew, and then it works at the same pace as a human being, right? So in that sense, we're very different from like the leave behind or stationary mower models, as they're called, right? What's different about us compared to even like the other sort of offerings within the sort of the travel along model is that, as far as we know, we're the only robot that today is deployed unsupervised. So it basically doesn't need human supervision. Uh, it does not need any teaching. So you don't need it to teach it a boundary. Like, you don't need to take it along like the edges of a boundary and like, have it like remember. We don't have any apps. We don't have any sort of UX on the robot other than an on off button. And you can take this robot anywhere on Earth to any turf site, put it down, press a button, and because of the AI model inside it, it knows exactly what to do next. So that is why we're fundamentally different from anything else that's out there, both
That's
the
a bold
stationary
statement.
mowers as well as the sort of the co-traveling mowers. Sorry. Yeah.
Nag, you just made a bold statement, and I don't want to challenge you on it, but it was bold. That your mower's going to know what to do no matter where you drop it off. Okay.
We're running it every day that way. So like, it's not a statement, it's proof.
Yeah. I mean, I get you, but it's still bold. Like, drop it off in my yard, and it's going to go mow my lawn, is what you're saying.
Yes.
If it could fit in my backyard.
Like, okay, let me add a little bit of a caveat, right? It's going to get 80 to 85% of your lawn, and like the guy alongside is going to get the rest, but it does not need to be taught anything a priori. So yes, you could still show up. Our crew can show up at your lawn, put the robot down, and rely on it to do 85% of your yard without any sort of prior visiting or teaching or mapping or whatever. Yeah.
So do you think the Roomba, or Roomba, whatever you called it, style lawnmower is going to disappear, and how many years will that take?
I think they're already like on their way out. Like, it's just as AI starts to eat the world, like
that's your conceptual view, but like in realistic terms, how many years before, you know what, you shouldn't be buying one of those because they are on their way out?
I think it's something that makes. I think it's something that makes sense as a stationary product. So residentially, 100%. We're not even entering that world again. It's like you're alongside somebody who's doing landscaping work all the time, and it's routed. So I think that you'll continue to see the like Husqvarna like mowers deployed at property owners, big and small. But as you see to like our business model and other, commercially autonomous mowers proliferate, it's going to challenge that as well, because the prices of all this stuff will come down. Its robustness will go up, and it'll be 100% instead of 85%. Which I'll just add to it's in very predictable ways. Like, we decidedly don't mow certain areas with our robot, and the crews deploying that like quickly understand what's their responsibility and what's the robot's.
Gotcha.
It's not a mystery.
I remember. Oh, go ahead. Nag,
no. I want to qualify, right? Like, this is not. I guess there's a bit of hyperbole here, and intentionally so, because we want to sort of make a strong claim. And want to sort of shake things up a bit. But if you take a look at the history of technology, it's never that, one technology just overnight replaces everything else. Like, even if you look at AMRs or wherever else, right? AGVs are still around. Like, these are these track-guided robots that run on magnetic strips, despite all the fancy AMRs and like, humanoids that are coming now. So there's always a continuum and a shift driven by, prior investments and whatever else. What we just mean to say is like, the world is changing rapidly. The pace of adoption might not sort of be as rapid as the change of technology itself. So,
But I like your model for a few different reasons. You're kind of like Tesla, where you can download anytime you want, you can just download an upgrade, test it out. So you got your own little laboratory built into your company.
That's
And that's
exactly
very,
it, right? And
yeah.
that's exactly it, because and that model, and you can take that analogy even further, right? Because look at Waymo and Cruise. They're running a robotaxi service, but they're doing it with a lot of investment, like deeply unprofitably, right? Because they have to run these cars, right? And they have to sort of, clean them, maintain them, all of that. Tesla, on the other hand, has convinced the world to pay them for the privilege of testing them, which is genius, right? In hindsight, because you have a bunch of people like paying them for full self-driving beta 12 or whatever, and they're making money off of selling full self-driving, but they're also deeply profitable because they're selling the cars and they're making like billions of dollars in profits. Um, you know, you can't do that for autonomous mowing, just for the simple reason that you can't sell a mower and expect to sort of, because you still need a guy behind it, and that sort of obviates the need to a landscaper today, right? If you say have a guy watch it all the time and still pay me a subscription fee, that's not going to work. Which is why most of like the big, the big autonomous mowers out there are still doing open areas, because that's the simplest thing that their mowers can do, and they still need a guy to be watching 2 or 3 of them at the same time. That model does not scale. Instead, if you deploy it within your own business, now you can use the profits of your own business to collect the data and improve your models. And that's how it's similar to Tesla. So there's a bit of a twist in how you sort of make the analogy between the two.
So is Husqvarna not able to capture data from all of its mowers out there in order to improve?
I don't know. I'm sure like they have their own sort of approach to it, but I don't think they're doing active data collection. And if they are, maybe they're doing it on a small subset.
Yeah.
But it's not just about data collection. It's also about letting a robot make mistakes and correcting it when it makes those mistakes. That is something that a product company can't do. Because when a product company sells a product to a landscaper, if it makes a mistake, the landscaper returns the robot and says, take it out of here. And that data collection needs to, and again with Tesla self-driving, right? The guy's behind the wheel and it like swerves off, the guy corrects it, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just data collection, it's the value of the people that are providing the feedback that is a really important part of that data engine, which I don't think anyone else is doing that out there. Because product companies just can't pull that model off. It's really hard for them to do that.
It's a different thing. They're selling a product. You're not. You're selling the service that results.
Not until we're ready.
Yeah. So I have a couple questions. What's the end game? Like, if you were private equity, I could tell you, we're gonna roll up to $1 billion and then sell it to somebody else. There you go. Simple end game. You're building a recurring model services business, and you're developing a technology infrastructure. Ultimately, they're two different things, even though you've got them integrated. So do you
talk about this?
What's your end game?
So, especially in the last year, we've done a great deal of work to really organize these into two separate businesses, essentially. So we're Electric Sheep is our like robotics company, and then we our service company is called Verdant Landscaping, and there's the relationship between the two entities that we can take out private equity on in the service co, so we can start to acquire and integrate larger and larger landscaping companies to grow that services business to, as we've kind of described in this conversation, grow the sandbox with which we will deploy and like curate the whole playbook around how you automate mowing. Then there's the robotics co that obviously like we're managing that landscaping business, and then we're the ones that are just showing the industry how you make this this business work, essentially. So they're very different businesses with different capital structures and different investors. But the relationship of the two is kind of like where the value is created.
But it's owned together right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, it has a common management, and as it grows, depending on sort of the holding period that like the investors have. So VCs have hold till IPO or hold till exit, right? So that part on the tech side is fairly well answered. On the private equity side, as the company grows, it may change investors, right, who want to sort of roll up their stake and sell it to the next bigger player. But the management team and Electric Sheep is going to stay the same. So we are going to continue to hold it, right, and run the company. And the investors in the service co, can enter and exit their positions when they see fit. That's how you want to think about it. It's somewhat similar to private equity in the sense that all of these firms that have been rolled up by private equity, the firms have stayed, but the owners have come and gone, right? Like you've had like someone rolls it up and sells it to the next guy, but the management in the firm kind of stays the same, and it just grows. That's how you describe it.
The precedence to this is like a platform company. And I would describe them as the owners in the maybe not in the literal sense, but in the figurative sense. They're the ones that are like the face of this business, operating it. But the financing may have to evolve over the lifetime of the business. But we're very much in we're acquiring, and we want to hold into perpetuity, because beginning of our discussion, we talked about like what happens beyond our first product. Well, there's so many interesting things to do and within outdoor work more broadly, and we want to continue to create and bring to market those things first within our own business, and then soon thereafter to the rest of the industry.
Yeah,
it's interesting. You're not directly competing against another product company, right? So you don't have to outmaneuver. We'll just say Husqvarna, but for audience sake, that's just company B, right? Or just generic company.
Yeah.
So on the one hand,
company,
yeah, company H or whatever, company ABC. So on the one hand, you get to go slower and more thoughtful because you don't have to always be looking out over your shoulder at them. But on the other hand, I could imagine if you have investors, they want to know, hey, when are we going to automate the next product the next product? How do we take what you've done and apply it to multiple products, in which case it becomes extremely interesting technology. When are we going to take this from our little company and try to sell it to the whole world and actually compete with company ABC? So I can imagine where the investors and even you guys are urgently thinking about this.
Yeah, I was going to just chime in to say that, luckily our investors really understand what the core value of what we do or what we're doing is. It's not product based. They understand like all the cool things this can get to, but just in commercial mowing, this is tens of billions of dollar opportunity that we could create a success 10 times over just focusing on that. And there's even disciplines within mowing. There's reel mowers for golf, and there's brush mowers, and these are in your mind, in our minds, like different products, but again, the core value is that data engine, the AI model, and then what is it? Its embodiment, like what machine is it operating? That's something that I don't think there's pressure to that. There's lots of opportunity, but there's so far, to your point, that we can go just with the mowing piece of this, and definitely eager to not just keep it to ourselves. But sell it to others. But we also acknowledge that it's tough to do that in an operations business where you need to make business sense and understand, exactly how this is going to happen from end to end. What are the roles associated with it? That's what we're very much planning to be completely open source in that way. We're not hiding trade secrets and how this is done, and we're not waiting till we want to sign on customers to do that. Talk to us right now. Like we're going to do as much as we can with the press and in our own social media channels, talking about what this looks like. What's the crew setup? What's the what are the other tools that we're working with these crews, and how are we bifurcating like what used to be the full service maintenance crew to autonomous mow crew and then a detail crew essentially. We want to share that now, and the idea is that we have very far to go just with this one focus.
So you're sharing it now to get people used to it, so that when you do decide to sell it, there'll be a lot more acceptance and understanding.
Yeah,
there will be a lot less pain of transition and like a lot more profit for the people who buy our robots. I think that's the way we look at it, because maybe our tagline is electric sheep. We're sort of spending on innovation so you don't have to, or something like that, right? I think that's how you describe it.
It's a huge mindset shift that we're just recognizing it'll take a decade for the broader industry to really come around to. And we want to be like the example as much as, I think like the Valley Crest, the Brickmans, like some of these original big guys from the 90s, that people saw how they were doing things. What's their truck and trailer setup and what equipment are they using? And I think it's a very, the industry is like, we look at each other, we go to the NALP events and we talk about what we're doing. We're there, we're talking about it as peers. And we want to be that like industry thought leader. Again, look 10 years down the line, what's landscape maintenance going to look like? We're trying to be like the leading edge to that discussion, and happy to share notes along the way.
And not just sort of at a qualitative level, right? Like, I think what's really important is when you one of the biggest things I respect about landscapers is that they're very pragmatic about sort of the dollars and cents. So at the level at which you need to convince them, it can't be like, here's this cool looking robot, like, let's go see it do a few things, and then I'll try and impress you with like all this whiz-bangery, and then you buy my robot. When 2 months later, you're really unhappy about it. I think the goal is to say, can we have case studies at the level of like 50, 100, maybe like 500 crews on both the impact of automation, how it was used, the impact of electrification, how did we deploy electric tools, right? How did we create these all electric mow crews? What were the unit economics on each of those crews, right? And how stable are they, right? So when you, as the landscaper, take our robots or take even like our, mowing van setup, like our, how we set up the electrical connections, the data connections, you're not in for any surprises. You know exactly what dollar goes in and like what dollar comes out, right? And that needs to be done as a quantitative case study, not just a qualitative case study. And that's kind of like what we're doing within our own business, right? And that's what we think landscapers will respect, because we're not having them do all the guesswork. We're trying to answer it to the best possible extent before handing it off. And I think that's the biggest challenge when it comes to automation and robotics, which no one talks about today, but that's really the core of it. It comes down to unit economics. If it's not going to work for you, then it's going to be a cute little pilot that you'll buy two of, each kind of like robot mower out there. You'll run it, you'll impress a few customers and say, look, I'm using robots, right? And then you do nothing with it as an industry. Yeah. And I think that needs to change. And we really want to figure it out. We really, really want to figure it out.
I think a fair amount of landscape firms are buying automated mower ABC and then figuring out in parallel the unit economics. They may have studied it ahead of time, but there's a certain amount of in parallel figuring it out. So, you're trying to do all that work so that it's more plug and play for your future client?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. And figuring out unit economics is, there's a lot more to do here. I feel like, while, okay, maybe they figure it out for like the large area mowers with like one supervisor, but really that's like such a small percentage of like the total work they do. Like what they really need to figure out is, how do I automate 100% of my mowing? That's what we want to figure out. Like it's a big difference in like what our mission is versus what a product company's mission is, right? Our mission is to build like the ultimate do everything more and get it to a point where, like the entire workflow, the playbook, the more, the infrastructure is ready to just like be dropped in to a landscaping company.
I'd also add too, like what do you do once you've achieved that?
Exactly.
That's not an obvious answer to a lot of people. To like, you were returning this resource to you. People assume it's a cost savings, but there's, how do you bid differently? The upskilling employees for other tasks. You think about recruitment differently. There's profiles within your business that didn't exist before. So I guess my point is, like, there's so many compounding effects that, again, to your point, like, want to remove the guesswork on and show a success story, and that won't be done in any short term. It's going to be done over the next decade, honestly, in many different ways. Again, we want to be the example for everybody else.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, you've got the ecosystem that you're doing a lot of learning at a lot of different parts and pieces of this, not just the mower.
Yep.
I like exactly that. So, sidebar question, but what kind of company out there might be looking at you and wondering if they should come and take you out, buy you up for good reasons or bad reasons? I don't, probably for good reasons. But is that, do you think you're likely to see somebody at some point making you that offer? I mean, a good offer?
I don't think so. Fundamentally, because I don't think like most of the traditional OEMs understand like, AI at any core level. Maybe in a few years, like they might be interested. And the landscaping companies, I mean, they don't like, firstly, they're not going to get into technology development themselves. And I don't think they know how to value a technology company. So I think we're going to be on our own for a little bit until sort of maybe we're more valuable to sort of the strategics, like the core AI companies who really understand like why we're trying to do all this like physical world AI work. But that's completely independent of the landscaping industry itself. It's independent of the OEMs, or it's independent of the bright views of the world. This is a very different, like the people who value, like the independents who value us would be for the AI model that we're building, because no such analogy or no such analogous model exists today for physical world environments, and we're building that.
Yeah.
But none of the usual suspects that we would bring up in this conversation would get what we're doing. And I mean, honestly, what's there to take out, right? We're building a services business and building like a deep tech business, and we're trying to achieve profitability. What are they going to try and, like, it's just like we can pretty much operate in our own silo for like a whole decade and like we'll be fine.
In other words, they can try, but
yeah. So you mentioned two obvious ones like landscape and then the OEM, but what about, is there a technology company out there that could benefit from your underlying technology?
That's exactly what I meant by the strategics, right? Like who, like the Googles of the world, the Amazons of the world. It only makes a difference if they have a big presence in robotics. We don't know yet, but we'd love to partner with some of those sort of firms that are agnostic to the industry, because I think there's a lot of value that both of us can unlock. But right now, our core focus is just chasing profitability and becoming sort of profitable at scale, and just building our model. That's all we want right now to do. And there's very little competitive threat now or years into the future.
Love that confidence. So, what's next for you guys? Give us a little PR, toot your own horn. What are we going to see coming next?
Yeah. So, really just further executing the model that we've talked about so far. We've made 4 acquisitions. We're next we're bringing on a capital partner to pull in larger acquisitions. So we're, our days are full of talking to landscape companies that want to exit their business, or at the very least take chips off the table and work with what we would describe ourselves as both a capital partner and a technology partner. So we can de-risk what you've built, and then we can go again build that landscaping 2.0 business together. Deploying robots, we're building other software tools, and again rethinking things from first principles. But we want to work with landscape business owners that have built really strong businesses with strong EBITDA, have a focus on maintenance, and have a large component of mowing. And then just really see the world the way that we do, that if you just step back from your day to day for a moment and thought 5-10 years down the road, do you buy into the fact that this is going to be a part of that future? Then, we want to work together. So you'll see, in the coming months, actually, some of these subsequent acquisitions, and then just more progress with our robot deployments, and starting to realize some of the promise that we've been talking about.
Have you approached Stanford to ask if you can take over their mowing?
We've done the Oval a few times, but really we don't have a business presence in the Bay Area. We just have an R&D presence, so it doesn't make sense to invest and set up a mow crew and whatnot here. We've got more than enough turf, wherever else we're deployed. So, but we do occasionally show up and cut grass in picturesque locations with permission, and it works out well for video reels. Yeah, it's certainly useful.
Any final predictions here? I like at the end of podcasts, every now and then I'll ask for a prediction. Where's the industry going now? This whole podcast has been about that. Any other predictions outside of your world that you want to share with us?
Nag, you want to go first?
Well, I will just say that, none of this, just want to tie back to the whole competitive thing, right? Robotics and the services businesses industry, they don't sort of transform overnight. So this is going to be a slow and steady, progression towards more and more automation. There's not going to be any major surprises that sort of come out of left field and you see overnight, some technology eating up everything else. So I think, but what's going to change is, we believe, and we obviously want to sort of pioneer a new model. We think there's going to be a lot of technology companies who end up being very tightly integrated with services companies, very similar to how Amazon exists today, as data plays a more and more important role in improving or feeding AI models that can improve operational efficiencies and customer experience. And so you'll see a lot of technology companies, instead of selling to services companies, you start to see them either acquire them or really partner very deeply. And there are already some examples that have happened in the parking garage space, or other places we can call out. But you're going to see a lot more and more of that. And our hope is that private equity will start to move beyond sort of their narrow focus on just EBITDA, and think more like growth equity investors. And maybe there's going to be a merging of the two pool sort of mindsets when it comes to capital deployment. Again, that's a hope. That's not a prediction. But the prediction was sort of the first part, which is things are going to sort of move towards integrated businesses. That we feel is going to happen more and more and more. That's just an obvious thing.
I'll echo it slightly, but my response would be, specifically the landscape industry, everyone will kind of move away from evaluators of technology, which is to say, when you're a landscape professional and you're watching a piece of technology, you are evaluating it against your best employee. That's not coming from a place of innovation. It's coming from a place of you're evaluating another vendor. And what Nag just described is there'll be companies like ours and in other service industries where they'll start to think of things as a cobot relationship. So how will I be able to kind of like move the needle with a robot alongside me? And that's where the rethinking of first principles things comes in. So those are very different ways to think about how technology will impact your business beyond landscaping. And then the other prediction I have is just around our world a little bit is, you're already starting to see this play out is investments and startups moving away from SaaS companies and towards physical deep tech problems or deep tech that solve real world problems. And, of course that's a prediction, but here we are like pretty pumped because we've been in that space for the past 4.5 years. And we think that's where the time, attention, money should be spent. And then what's more than that is instead of these 2022 ways of running a business, people are going to appreciate pragmatic approaches to innovation and technology. And again, like that's who we believe we are at Electric Sheep is we're rethinking things from first principles on what the world will look like a decade plus out from now, but we're taking a very pragmatic, ops-minded approach to how we get there. And I think the world will come around to viewing and appreciating that in a big way in the coming years.
Speaking of SaaS, that's what, software as a subscription. And so what about service? Okay. So what about your product as a subscription? When you go to sell to other outside companies, could you foresee doing that on a subscription model?
Yeah, I mean that's very standard, right? You'll end up. That's what we did before we ended up, building vertically integrated companies. I think it just needs to. The only difference is you have to make sure that gross margins that look great on paper actually translate to cash for the robot company. So I think that only happens when you can truly unlock sort of reliability. And so when we feel like the threshold of reliability has been crossed such that it's as reliable as, let's say, Aspire, right? Today, right? Like a robot is as reliable as clicking a button on Aspire, then I think like selling it as a subscription service makes a ton of sense. When there's no reliability, you'll end up spending a lot of money on after sales support and customer support and whatnot. And your gross margins are basically going to go negative really quickly. So there's no point in sort of talking about subscriptions right now.
But you'll have that issue anyways when you start selling, whether you're selling or subscribing or selling a subscription. So you've got to get to that reliability either way.
So if you have a 70%, right. So if you have a 70% reliable product, then you have a really high cost of like after sales support. But let's say you have a 99% reliable product, then you have orders of magnitude less cost of after sales support. So the difference between like a 70, 80% and 99% is not like the 19%. It's orders of magnitude that gets unlocked, right? When you sort of start to look at sort of the statistical distribution of events that happen. So, and this is very true for robots.
But of course, the cost to build that also escalates. So you've got to find that intersection that works.
The cost, could you repeat that? What the cost to build what specifically?
The cost to increase reliability is also escalating, right? So you've got to find the intersection of the two that's going to work for you.
That's a really good question, right? That's an excellent question. And this is how we've thought about it, which is when you deploy it within your own business, because you're effectively not you're generating cash from other activities, and you're also paying for the human who's working alongside these robots, right? Doing other things. The cost of improvement to go from like 70% to 71% or 72% reliability is actually fairly nominal, right? But now you flip that and you say if you were selling a 70% good enough product, to climb the 1%, you're going to bleed cash to do that. Because you now have to take a hit on a subscription services. You have to drop everything you're doing whenever a customer calls and like attend to it, which jacks up like your customer service, costs. You have to maintain an extensive network of after sales support, which jacks up like your costs on spares and servicing deployments and all that. But if you're running it within your own business, to grow go up the reliability curve, you can do it at your own pace, and more importantly, you don't have to bleed money to do it. So I think it's a vastly different value proposition when it comes to sort of the incremental gain that every dollar spent to increase reliability it's way more economical to do it this way than that way.
Listen, I want to thank you guys here. We've gone on for a long time. Instead of going on for 2 hours, why don't I just have you back in the future when you're on to version 2 or product 2? Either one of those I think will be interesting. And for now, just thank both of you for coming on our podcast.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yeah, likewise. This is awesome, and had a blast with the discussion, Jeff, and appreciate you having us on.
Till next time.